Well, hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever in the world you are connecting from today. And if you're lucky, it's Friday for you. If you're more lucky, it's already Saturday morning. So thank you so much, everybody. Happy Friday to everyone. Uh, Thank you for being part of our Hacking HR live chat series. These conversations that we started at the beginning of the year, inviting so many brilliant, talented authors who have written about great topics, and they come to the show to share their insights, their ideas, their research, their recommendations with all of us in this Hacking HR community. It's been truly exciting to be doing this because, well, I'm hoping that, of course, you are finding value out of these conversations because that's what this is meant for. But at the end of the day, even selfishly, I have been growing so much. I have been learning so much out of each of these conversations that I've had in this Hacking HR live chat series. So I'm hoping that you are tuning in to most of them. But if you have missed any of the previous sessions, any of the previous conversations that we've had, please go back to our website, hackinghr.io, click on live chats, and you will find all the recordings in there. They will feel that they are live. They are not live anymore, of course, but you have all that material available for you. A lot of different topics. In particular, during the month of May, and we're recording this or we're doing this live on June the 2nd, but during the entire month of May, we focused most of our content and our conversations on mental health. Purposefully so, of course, because it was Mental Health Awareness Month. But the topic of mental health continues and will continue, I think, for a long time to be a priority for our community, to share insights with all of you who are in HR. We know that many of you are burned out and are stressed, not only personally but also because of the work that you are doing. So you will find a lot of great content in there in our community and as part of this live chat series about mental health. So for those of you who are connected live right now, please let us know where you are connecting from in the world. It will be great to know what everybody is. Just post it in the chat. I see people from all over the world. If you are connected live right now and you have any questions, any comments, any insights, any research, anything that you want to share with the community about the topic that we are discussing today, please post it in the chat as we progress in this conversation. That's what the chat is for, right? So that we can all grow together. So super excited to talk today about mental health and well-being in the workplace, specifically a practical guide for employers and employees about mental health and well-being. So I'm going to welcome now to the screen Gill. Good morning. Well, good afternoon to you. Good morning to me. Good afternoon to you. How are you doing?
Good morning to you, Enrique. And yes, good afternoon to me here in the UK. All good, thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Great day for you to talk about mental health and well-being. You just had a granddaughter. The sun is shining. What else can we ask for, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, super excited to have you with me today, Gill. And I would love for you to introduce yourself to our community. If you can let us know more about who you are, the work you've done, and why you wrote a book on mental health and well-being. And you also have a book on emotional intelligence, by the way. So you're really focusing on the very comprehensive idea of mental health and well-being. So please introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi. Well, yes, thanks for inviting me. Yep, my name's Gill Hasson. I'm here in the town of Brighton on the south coast in the UK. My sort of career around well-being, mental health, personal development, professional development, all of those things sort of happened after I did a degree as a mature student, when I was in my 30s. I had traveled and lived abroad a lot, and I did a degree in social anthropology, which is about other people's cultures, their beliefs, the way they interact with each other. And I've always been interested in people as individuals and people in groups and
Hmm.
communities. That always fascinates me, the dynamics between people. And of course, one of the places that happens for most of us, if not in our neighborhoods, it happens at work. We're in small communities, and workplaces have cultures. They have ideas, they have ideals, they have beliefs, they have values, they have ways of doing things. And yeah, work, we all know that work is good for you in that it can provide that community, support, focus, confidence, and of course, financially, it provides money for us to live. But it can also the workplace can also be a very difficult place, particularly with stress being something that can really undermine your well-being and mental health.
Well, that is very interesting that you took the topic on the topic of well-being and mental health from that experience of working with cultures and communities, right?
Mm,
And actually, as you're introducing yourself, I'm reflecting about how little time now we spend in community, in our neighborhoods, with our neighbors, and with our friends around, in our small geographical tribes, and how much more time we're spending at work. Meaning that I don't know if you want to comment on this, but I would love if you do. All that energy from our social interactions that we drew in the past from our relationships with neighbors and our own family members, now we're drawing that from our coworkers, because we're spending a third of our time now at
yeah.
work.
Yeah, that's right. So, in sort of in the past, in history, in more traditional cultures, our work was with our neighbours. Maybe we worked in an agricultural, we lived
Yeah.
in an agricultural community. So you all farmed together, you shared resources, gave each other support. So your work and your neighbours, your community, were all entwined, but now they're very separate. They're two very different things. And I think it, it's since the Industrial Revolution, certainly as well, people work, that's all new, working in factories, working in offices, particularly in working in offices. People come from all over the place. They're not your
Yeah.
local community. Factories, yeah, they often factories were set up in communities and everybody in the community worked there. But now that office work has become a big thing, and of course, working from home,
Yeah.
it's all for human beings. This is all new, and it brings its own unique rewards and benefits, but also its own unique challenges and difficulties.
Yeah, and I'm going to actually use that as a segue to ask you my next question, right? What are what's the impact of us now, us humans now, drawing that sense of connection, and feeling that we want to be part of a tribe? What is the impact of now having to draw that from work, right? Building meaningful social connections at work because we don't spend enough time with our neighbors, so everybody's busy, or uh, even building relationships at work, or the sense of meaning, as purpose and passion. What is the impact of now getting all of that from work, and what are the unique challenges of that in our mental health and our well-being?
Well, yeah, so we've got to, it takes effort. I think, this is one of the key things that I've found. We know that about our physical health. You can't just expect to be physically healthy
Yeah.
and do nothing to contribute towards that. And the same is true with well-being and mental health. And working with other people, being with other people, it takes work. I think it's very easy to look on the outside of any community, whether that's in a workplace or in a village or wherever it is, and think it's just, people either get on or they don't get on. It's not like that. You actually have to work at it, and it's very easy for things to quickly get out of hand, I think, at work, because the pressure, the bottom line is, of course, if you work for somebody, if you work for yourself, you've got to make money.
Yeah.
And so there's a constant pressure because of the way I see it, is because of the levels of competition amongst businesses to not just survive, but to thrive. And so the only way you can do that is to get your workers to work hard and produce some returns. So there's challenges for people at work. There's challenges for employers and employees.
Yeah.
Yeah, people get stressed. They get overwhelmed at work. They feel unable to cope as a result of the pressures and demands and deadlines. Having too much responsibility is another typical thing, being expected to do too much, particularly I think when people do something well. This is something that I've been talking about with someone only this week, that because they do their job so well, that they just get piled on more and more because
That's the
they
reward.
yeah, like, oh, they can, and again, we all do that, we always
Yeah.
turn to the most competent people, but those people then are likely to get burnout. Other challenges at work are poor communication between management and between colleagues. That's a big one. Poor communication, a lack of management support. Poor interpersonal relationships. One of the big issues that we hear about is bullying at
Yeah.
work. People being harassed and bullied. I mean, we've even got here in the UK, we've got laws around harassment, any sort of racism, misogyny. Those are all issues that can really impact on people's mental health. So, and finally, a poor physical working environment. You're
Yeah.
working in dark, cramped
Hmm.
conditions. I don't know, noisy conditions. The environment can really impact. So there's a lot of challenges in the workplace.
Yeah, you're making me think about this meme, this funny image going around that says something like, "We want to bring people back to the office for them to collaborate and innovate." And there's a picture of the office, which is pretty much all these cubes that look like matchboxes, tiny, dark, all look the same. Everybody's in that cube, not even seeing the other person or
Yeah,
interacting with the other person. And you're making me think about, wow, is that the office that we want to return to? I really don't think that that's an environment conducive to collaboration, let alone innovation. So there's a powerful connection in there, even between how the workplace looks like physically and
yeah,
the mental health and the well-being of our people, of the employees.
yeah. Be as you say, that sort of cubicle concept. I mean, people that if you work in that sort of thing, you're literally isolated.
Yeah,
You're cut off from everybody else. And the thing is, humans are social beings.
yeah,
It's what we're like. We
yeah.
we are very good at cooperating, collaborating, supporting, and encouraging. But as I've said, things can quickly, go wrong.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I'm a big advocate of remote work, of course. But one thing that I have been sharing, particularly since 2021, when some people were returning to an office after the initial shock of the
Yeah,
pandemic. I have been sharing that companies that really want to bring people back to the office, the question shouldn't be how to force them back to the office. The question is how to create an office that is so awesome that people want to go back to it, right? Uh, and the truth is that for most of us, even if we love working remotely, some of us would eventually one day would love to go to the office to see our coworkers and hang out and socialize, because like you said, we are social beings. But if we are going to go back to an office that looks gray, dark, no windows, all looks the same, I don't want to go to that. I prefer not to have that social connection and just build it on social on a virtual mode rather than going to that kind of office. So even how you design your workplace, what I call the workplace experience, can create the right conditions for mental health, but at the same time, the right appeal for people to say, I want to go to that kind of office a couple of
yeah.
times per week or one time per week.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and yeah, whether it's an office, so a lot of places workplaces are for the employee and the clients or the customers. So hospitals, for example, it works for both the medical staff and the patients. If you're running a school or a nursery and any
Yeah.
sort of daycare, it's not just for the employees in those sort of
Yeah.
situations. In the service industry, shops, we all need good, well lit, the right temperature. We need surrounding. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but it does have to be taken into consideration, the
Yeah.
physical surroundings. And for some people, that has a huge impact. I
Yeah.
am definitely one of those people. For a lot of people, they're just quite happy, in front of a screen, and they really don't mind where they are. But
Yeah.
that doesn't work for everybody.
Yeah, well, when we connected before kicking off the live today, the first thing you told me was I had a new granddaughter and the sun is shining, right? Those
Yes.
are the first two things that you told me, and that has power in it, right? Jill,
Yeah.
let me ask you this: as you were doing the research for your book, what did you find to be the effect on our mental health and our well-being of both the extremes of a workplace that doesn't care for this at all, that does the wrong things, and a workplace that is doing what they need to do to care for the mental health and the well-being of the people? What are the effects? What are they doing differently? How the outcomes of what they're doing differ because of the way they are doing and caring for the mental health of the people?
Yeah, it's tangible. You can, any of us could walk into a workplace where things aren't being done, they're not being done to promote and strengthen people's well-being and mental health. Immediately people look, they just physically very often look hunched and grey and
Mm,
miserable. You can feel that atmosphere. People are often again, if it was a service type of industry, if you go into a shop where people aren't, the employees aren't treated well, you know that generally because the staff don't treat you well as a
yeah,
customer or a client. So we can tell the big difference when you go into a workplace, you visit a workplace, or you have dealings with an organization where everybody's being supported and their mental health and well-being is taken seriously. Where when you go into an organization like that, totally the opposite.
yeah,
People are, they're not all smiling and like they're a little bit crazy. They're not over the top, but you can feel an atmosphere of people are happy to be where they are at work. They're happy to serve you and provide for you. They're interested. They have a level of enthusiasm. It's tangible. It's
yeah.
not, it's not difficult. It's really not difficult to know the difference when if you were just a visitor.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you say that, because when I talk about culture, and we have created a lot of content about this, a measure of whether a culture is good or not is just when you come in the office. Nobody has to tell you we have the greatest culture in the world. You just come into that office and you see how people treat each other. You see how people interact with each other, because
Yep.
that's the reflection of how their employer, their company, their leaders, particularly their senior leaders and frontline managers, are treating them. If you see, like you just said it, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be necessarily this this is as a direct result, but people hunched down, people looking, physically depressed maybe, or sad, treating customers with, not the right
Disdain,
answers,
yeah, lack
disdain,
of interest, yeah,
lack of interest, like there's got to be something going on here,
yeah,
right? And the opposite is true as well. When
yeah,
people are, trying to serve you better, and they are interacting with respect and dignity towards each other, that's a reflection of the culture.
definitely, yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned something about, the top, the leaders, and the employers, and that's really important, that well-being has to be taken seriously right from the top. If
Yeah,
you've got the top tier of management or the owner of the organization not taking it seriously,
yeah,
I know this also from friends that have been teachers. If a good school has a really good head, that's why these people at the top of their game, they get paid so much money, because they're responsible for a huge amount. And if they, as far as mental health and well-being is concerned, if they don't consider it to be an issue, then it just doesn't filter down. So it has to start at the top.
yeah. Let me ask you now this question about leadership, and it's sort of a two-part question. Part number one is, what do you tell leaders that tell you, I know mental health is important, but we're not a therapy company. We're not. They actually tell you sometimes we're not a non-for-profit, or something that just cares for the people. in their condition other than just being an employee. So some leaders still say something along those lines, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we are here to make money.
Yeah.
So what are you to leaders that think about that? And number two, related to that, but different as well. What do you tell leaders that are telling you, Jill, I know that I have to take care of the mental health of my people, but I'm burned out too. I am stressed too, and I am anxious too. So how can I serve others to improve their own mental health when I am suffering myself and nobody's looking out for me?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So first of all, if somebody felt that, well, yeah, we're not, we're not running some sort of support group here. We're actually
Yeah,
running a business.
yeah,
I would say that the bottom line is, if happy employees make for good productivity and increased productivity, where, we just, each of us only have to think about ourselves. If we're down, upset, fed up about something, and we have something to do, whether it's just, a simple thing like making a meal, we just don't really put our heart into it. And so the end product often isn't that good. So actually, it's to the benefit of an employer or a manager or a supervisor to actually support and promote well-being and mental health, because the bottom line is that it actually makes for a happy, productive, and therefore, financially sound
yeah,
workplace. But as you said, a lot of managers would say, they're under, their people as well, they're employees as well. They get very stressed. And so what I always say to that is, this is again about what I said about, we've got to take responsibility here, whether you're an
yeah,
employee, or you're an employee and you're the manager or the supervisor. You've got to get support and help. And I would say to anybody, whether it's an individual or a leader or a manager, there's so much available out there. I mean, obviously, obviously, I'm going to say my book, read my
yeah,
book. But
yeah,
it's I've found out a huge amount from researching. Any of us can do that. We've all got Google.
yeah,
There's so many organizations, mental health organizations, that offer often low cost training. There's a lot that you can read up yourself. So I would say, yeah, for individuals, you've got to get yourself educated and more knowledgeable about well-being and mental health. And for the leaders, the supervisors, and the managers, yeah, you've really got to be careful not to get burnt out, because you've got that real weight of responsibility of
yeah,
everybody else.
yeah,
So you also need to get support and find out where you can get the. No one's expecting anyone to be a mental health expert.
yeah,
That's for certain. Yes, of course, you're not running some sort of mental health organization for people, but we can all, as with any aspect of our life, that information is out there for us. We can go and get it. We can get support. We can get training, and we have to protect ourselves and each other.
yeah. You know what's interesting though, Jill, now, and you just mentioned it, and I'm thinking about it, that you don't have to be a mental health professional to support the mental health of your employees as a leader, but what you do can make a difference. Like, for example, if you treat people with respect and dignity, which really is, you don't need to be a mental health professional to treat people with respect and dignity. That improves the mental health of the people. If you give them credit, if you show gratitude, if you just ask them what's on your mind, what's going on, is there anything that I
Yeah,
can help you with, even those tiny everyday actions have an impact, a positive impact on the mental health of the people. So even if they are not that mental health expert, their actions definitely have both either a positive or a negative impact. And by the way, talking about the impact of leaders here, there was research from a big work tech company, research that came out, I think, at the beginning of the year, saying that leaders, direct leaders, have an impact on the mental health of their employees that is equal or higher than the impact that their therapists and their spouses or significant others have on the employees. And all I kept thinking was, wow, leaders do or can actually either lift you up when you're going through hard times, or they can really break you down. So that what a powerful impact that a leader can have, even with the wrong or the right words, right?
Yeah. And actually we learn that from a very young age with teachers, don't we?
Yeah,
We,
yeah,
we always all remember hopefully we've all forgotten the teachers that were hopeless and rubbish and nasty and mean, but the ones that were supportive, encouraging, inspirational, totally made a difference to us as children. So
yeah,
again, this is, a lifelong thing, something that, as humans, we need people who are uh, leaders in charge of others, supervising or managing others.
yeah,
They don't need, it's not about being a really nice, super lovely
yeah,
person.
yeah,
It's just very specific stuff like talking to staff regularly, either informally or, for example, at appraisal meetings. See how they're doing, how you're doing, how you're coping with your workload, how you're getting on with everybody else. Is anything in particular becoming stressful? Another good thing to do is actually in team meetings to make an issue about well-being,
yeah,
stress, difficulties that people are experiencing. So a regular meeting, a regular item in meetings could be just simply to go around and everybody and say, so what have you found difficult or challenging or stressful recently, as an individual, maybe as a team? What do you think what make things easier? And what, if anything, has contributed to positive well-being for you? What have you found that's been helpful, encouraging, supportive, made you feel good? What's made you feel good? What's made you feel bad? And what can we do about it? So
yeah,
actually, uh, normalizing discussions like this, talking like this, an informal chat or a formal meeting, and also recognizing that it's not just work issues without being wanting to pry, just showing an interest in
mhm,
people's lives at home.
yeah,
How's the family, or any health issues, physical health issues a person might have. Just being available to talk and chat and actually appear genuinely interested and empathic. And I think you mentioned I've written a book about emotional intelligence, and I think it's important for people to know that empathy is quite simply being able to relate to the emotion that someone else is feeling, not the situation. So if somebody told you that they had to
mhm,
give a presentation that afternoon at work and they were really anxious about it, you might think, well, I'm never anxious about giving presentations. It's not a problem for me. No, you don't. That doesn't mean to say you can't be empathic or have empathy. What you do relate to there is the feeling of anxiety. So maybe you feel anxious about flying in an aeroplane. So that's how being empathic works. It's actually looking at the emotion and thinking, when have I felt like that? I haven't felt like that in the situation they are. Maybe you have, but if not, oh yeah, I remember when I felt guilty, jealous, anxious, whatever it is, and then that can really help you to relate to the other person. That's what empathy is. And again, we don't particularly need any high level training for that.
yeah.
It's something we're human beings. We can do this.
Oh my gosh. Now I feel a little bit more pressure to do part number two of our conversation, just focused on mental, I'm sorry, on emotional intelligence. Uh, well, you just got me thinking about that one definition of emotional intelligence, but I'm going to hold my horses here for a second and come back to a couple of last
Sure.
questions about mental health. But I
Mm,
definitely would love to have you back, Jill, just to talk about emotional intelligence. What a powerful definition, by the way. I can't get my head, stop thinking about that that definition, right? Because we always think about putting yourself in other people's shoes, but it's not in their shoes as in the situation they are going through, but in the emotions.
yeah.
And wow, what a powerful definition. But I'm gonna bring back the topic to mental health, which all related, and we have to schedule the second part talking
Yeah.
about
Sure.
emotional intelligence, right? You said something before that I want to turn it into this following question. You said, caring for the mental health of people and the well-being is not just, it's not necessarily about being polite, being nice, and being bubbly and whatever it is, right? It is it has a different meaning. And what I was thinking about is the stigmas about what mental health actually is, right? And how we can create an environment that is more conducive to the healing of our mental health, to the healing of the many things that are happening with our well-being. So can you talk a little bit about stigma, removing the stigma, how we can do that in the workplace, the role that leaders, but all of us individually play in removing that stigma from these conversations and not confusing it with what it's not?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, it's important, I think, to know what what stigma is, or when somebody or something is stigmatized. A feeling of stigma, if something is stigmatized, it's given a label of being that there's something wrong.
Yeah.
So if you are stigmatized for, many years ago when I was very young, in those days, being homosexual, getting divorced, those were, say, two issues that were stigmatized. It was
Yeah.
as if though you had done something wrong. So that very often happens with mental health. It's stigmatized. It's if you've got ill mental health, you're trying to manage or cope with a mental health difficulty, it's often seen as there's something wrong with you. Well, so we need to remove that. And one of the best ways is to develop a culture of openness and communication around that. And actually, I've got here from the book, there was going back to the leaders, and it's starting at the top again. I'd just like to read something that we'd written, myself and Donna Butler, who I wrote the book with, that we wrote it in the book, and I'll read it as verbatim. In September 2019, Deborah Lee, the chief executive of Gloucestershire National Health Foundation, spoke in a National Health Service Employers podcast about her experience of mental health and burnout. And in the podcast, Deborah said that she recognized that her candid disclosure was an important move to leading the way to tackling the stigma associated with mental illness. Her disclosure was a clear signal that if a senior figure in the organization can talk about their mental health, so can they. So if people know that their managers will be open and supportive, it reduces the stigma. So that's one person from who's a leader. And let me just read you one other short piece from somebody who is an employee, and she's as a result of having sort of team meetings around well-being and mental health, she said, I never thought other colleagues were suffering in silence too. The mental health awareness training brought about a more open discussion in the following weeks and months. I had no idea other people in my team were also impacted by ill health. Just to know my workplace takes this seriously and are compassionate means that I now feel I can speak about what I know now are the early warning signs that I am becoming anxious. It stopped the vicious cycle gaining speed and taking over. So those are two
Wow.
sort of case studies of actually just having courage, really being
Yeah.
open and talking about, this is how I feel. And I know that for lots of people, they would go, there's no way that I want to do that. But if you are somebody who can take that little bit of courage and just, without oversharing and constantly telling everybody that you know how you're feeling, but if you're somebody who can have a bit of courage and actually let other people know that you've either experienced mental health issues or you're currently struggling in some way, then that's destigmatizing it. It's letting people know. And you can see from Deborah Lee's experience, if someone at the top can do that, not everybody at the top has had mental health problems, but if they can just share that, then that opens it all up and makes it, people think, well, if the top person can do it and talk about it, then it's clearly not such a bad thing.
Wow, that it's I am reflecting about all of what you just said, but particularly one thing, this quote that you have from this employee saying uh, pretty much something along the lines of, I thought I was alone, right?
Yeah,
I thought it was
yeah,
just me. And if I think it's just me, then I think there's something wrong with me,
yeah,
right? Because if
yeah,
it's not happening to anybody else, there's got to be something wrong with me. And the moment you open up the opportunity for other people to say, I am suffering too, and there's less silence about that suffering, you begin to understand, number one, there's nothing wrong with me. It's not just me. It is
yeah,
happening to other people. Therefore, there's got to be some conditions creating these difficulties, these adversities, these illnesses that we're dealing with, and now we can move on to do something about them, right? But you got to get unstuck from that place of thinking there's something wrong with me. And at least at
yeah,
work, you do that via just acknowledging that your own situation, maybe having that little bit of courage, respecting others that are showing up that way, but also understanding that there may be, even if they're not speaking up about it, there may be other people going through that experience. That is really empowering.
yeah, and very powerful. In all my work in
Hmm.
teaching, running courses and workshops, I'm always keen to get people to share, and I don't just, say, "Right, hands up if you've ever experienced this or done that." I feel that I have a a a pretty powerful way of doing that, a rather a simple way of doing it, and that's just to get people to write down any difficulties or problems they've had with whatever issue it is we happen to be talking about, and then to turn to the next person and just share with each other what they've written down,
Wow.
and then to anyone now want to say anything. So by not putting people on the spot, by getting them to empty their head and write down difficulties and challenges, whether it's to do with mental health or being assertive or being a parent. I used to teach quite a lot of stuff around teenage and adolescent development. Get people to just put it down on paper, then to share that with someone else, and then actually go, okay, that by then people start to feel safe. They feel like,
Yeah.
I've got it out. Now I've just spoken to someone else about it, and he's told me or she's told me their thing. Oh, it's not just me. And often I find I can get everybody in the group to say, yeah, okay, this was my experience. And the amount of people that go, oh my goodness, just knowing I'm not the only one who feels like this,
Yeah.
who's not coping with their adolescent a teenager, or yeah, or with their mental health, or whatever it is we happen to be talking about. There's nothing worse than feeling like you're the only one, and that's where stigma comes from. If you feel like you're the only one, or you're one of just a few people, then clearly you're not normal. There's something wrong with you,
Yeah.
and if you're not normal, you are doing something wrong, and that's where the stigma comes.
That is incredible. Jill, thank you so much for sharing that. And as we get ready, I want to be mindful of your time. You're probably going to go and see your granddaughter. I
Yeah.
heard I heard a seagull flying by a little while ago, and and I want to make sure that you enjoy your sunshine afternoon
Mm,
and your new
sure.
granddaughter. But I want to ask you one last question to
Mm.
wrap up our conversation, and it is this: I know there's complexity and quote unquote rocket science behind fixing, the many conditions that are negatively impacting our mental health and well-being at work. But if there's one thing that people can start doing right now at work, whether they have authority and power and influence, or whether they are, John Doe, Mary Jane, just with an individual contributor at work, what would that one thing be to improve our mental health and to improve our well-being at work?
I would say complete a wellness action plan. Let me explain what that is. A wellness action plan is something that was devised by a woman in America called Mary Ellen Cope. And a wellness action plan is quite simply a document, and I'll tell you where you can download templates of this from in a second. It's a document that you quite simply fill in, which has things like, what stresses me out at work? What do I find difficult? What do I find challenging? What would help? What do I enjoy doing at work? What do I find that I'm good at? It
Mhm.
really gets you to be aware of how and when you are and you're not coping. And what a
Mm.
lot of places do is they share this with other with their managers. So it's something that forms the basis for discussion. So whether somebody's already got a mental health difficulty or not at all, and often a lot of organizations will have the wellness action plan in place for the person to complete when they start the job, so that
Yeah.
they can start from a really good place. So a wellness action plan, you can go in the UK, you can go to our main mental health organisation here called mind.org.uk. But I would say that if you Googled it, whatever country you're in, a wellness action plan, that's the one thing I'd say that really get you thinking and give you the basis for something to talk about maybe with your manager.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Jill, for sharing all of the insights, resources, and everybody who's tuning in. Go and check out Mental Health and Wellbeing in the Workplace by Gill Hasson and her co-author as well. So, Jill, once again, thank you so much for coming to the show on a Friday afternoon for you and sharing all of these insights and all the great work you've done through your research. And definitely the next step for me will be to send you an email on Monday morning to schedule part number 2 to talk about emotional intelligence. Thank you
Great.
so much, Jill.
Okay, thank you, Enrique.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I will see you soon in any of our events that we have planned for you or another Hacking HR live chat series conversations. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Stay safe, stay well. Thank you.